Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's V the Guerrilla Economist, and we have with us the man who needs no introduction. It's Harley Schlanger. You can find his work over at LaRouchePack.com, as well as the SchillerInstitute.org. Harley is the voice of reason and sanity in an insane and chaotic world. So, with that being said, Harley, how are you, sir?
Well, I have to say it's been pretty hectic the last few days.
Oh, I could assume as to why, Harley. I could assume as to why.
Well, to try and follow events from over here on the other side of the ocean,
Yeah.
you got to burn the candle at both ends, be up late
Yes, you
at
do.
night and then get up early in the morning. But, this is one of these moments in history where we don't have time to catch our breath because there are new developments hourly.
Yep.
And a lot of the other side is running these operations that, if you simply look at it from the standpoint of vote fraud, you're missing the bigger picture.
Right.
This is something that was put in place before Donald Trump was elected. After
Correct.
the election in 2016, it became clear that the arrogance of the establishment had blinded them to the possibility they would lose. And they made a determination, not all of them. I mean, Hillary Clinton is still batso, but the more serious thinkers on the other side, and by that I mean the really evil Machiavellian schemers, realized they had to put something in place because what they were afraid of was that Americans would be rallied behind a president who is committed to the idea of defending the sovereignty of the nation, reindustrializing the country, and actually putting American interests first. And so everything that we're seeing unfold, including the Russia Gate, the Ukraine impeachment, the constant media lies, smears, and slanders, the censoring that's going on now, where they're even censoring the president. All of this was part of an operation designed to make sure that they wouldn't be caught short again. Now, that's where you have to look when you're trying to figure out, was there fraud? Was there a fraud committed? And I think, the things to look at is number one, the fake polls, which was designed to suppress the vote. There's no other explanation for it. Is it really possible that the pollsters are that clueless? I don't think so. I think this was a deliberately designed psyop to demoralize Trump supporters and keep them away. What they didn't count on was that people would respond to the president going out and doing these rallies and inspiring them with optimism. So the voters turned out. Now, they didn't depend on the suppression of the vote. They obviously had other things in place. And I can't confirm what I'm about to tell you, but I want to give people a place they can go to listen to this. Kirk Wiebe, who is one of the technical experts, later a whistleblower, former NSA technical advisor, worked very closely with Bill Binney, Tom Drake, and others in opposing the metadata collection that was set up after 9/11. So he's an expert on this. Wiebe did a report last night on LaRouche Pack where he said you have to look at this program called Scorecard, which is a program which is designed to rig elections in other countries, but which he said is totally applicable for the United States, that as long as the vote discrepancy is within 2 to 3%, it can work. And Kirk gives a technical explanation for what he's discussing, which I can't replicate. But he basically said that this is what he thinks is underway. He and a group of people working with him are going to get this are already getting it, I should say, to the Trump people. And if you want to listen to what he said last night, you can go to the LaRouche Pack website or the LaRouche Pack site on YouTube. And from what's called the Thursday, I think it's called the Fireside Chat, Thursday Fireside Chat. Starting at about 38 minutes, you get Kurt Wiebe talking about how this worked. So I think this is really, yeah, there it is. It's showing up on the screen now. Yeah, so that's where you can find it. I think it's very interesting because it's one lead among many, but I think it does show that there still is a possibility to turn this thing around. even though so much was done to make sure that Joe Biden became, or the corpse of Joe Biden became the president.
You able to play that clip?
I'm not sure. It's over 2 hours, V. So I'm not sure where it would be.
Oh
Yeah,
God, I thought
yeah,
it was a
yeah,
little clip. I
yeah,
can't see
yeah.
from
Now
my
you
angle.
can, CJ, you can find it somewhere past 30 minutes. I don't have the exact. I just heard it. I wouldn't recommend playing it right now, but if you can find it, you can post it later. I think it's really important for people to have that as one of the potential tools in raising the question, because if you say there was vote fraud, people say, prove it. Where's the evidence?
It's
Well,
so
here's
easy.
a guy, well, here's a guy who helped to design the capability to commit fraud in other countries,
Yeah,
who makes the point that the same way we saw spying operations and placement of fake emails in foreign country websites, has now said that it's definitely what's been done in the United States by the same networks that develop these systems, namely the so called deep state or permanent bureaucracy.
yeah.
And here's someone who was part of that. Wiebe was an expert on Russian cyber warfare and Russian internet capabilities. And so he knows it. So, anyway, I just think that's really crucial because we're going to be in a fight probably, unless they can convince Trump to concede, which I don't think they will. There's going to be a fight going on, and we have to be up to date in it.
Yeah. Here's what I think. I've heard of a scorecard and the system that runs it, which is called Hammer. And I've known it was originally put up back. Actually, we became known of it back in 2012. And in 2016, when Odumbo left office, him and his crony gang of miscreants took a lot of that with them, with alongside Brennan, because Brennan's been running his own little data mining, data acquisition company where they were backdooring data and analytics to countries, corporations, and so on and so forth. So that scorecard software left with them. It's government property. They should have never taken it. The thing with scorecard, just like you said, Harley, when the voting is close, 2 to 3%, you can kick it in. You could probably push your candidate over. The way things are going in these key swing states is it's not a 2 or 3%. It's originally before all the fraud which started being reported. I mean, Trump was up 12, 13, 14, 8, 15 points, 8 points here, 10 points there. And little by little, and here's the funny part, and I think my wife made note of this. She's very good at this kind of stuff. 100, all of a sudden, the 138,000 ballots that just showed up in the middle of the night in Wisconsin, 150,000 that showed up in Michigan, and you're seeing 5,000 ballots found here, 10,000. You notice it's all round numbers, and my wife made a point like these aren't just round numbers; these are purchase orders. I was telling myself, "Holy crap! These are." She's right. It's purchase orders, 1,000%. Oh, all of a sudden the dial on the phone. Hey, Bobby, we're down. 4,700 votes here. Okay, I got a pallet of 5,000. I'll send it right over. And then we see it on camera, a red wagon wheeled in at 4 a.m., filled with exactly 5,000 ballots. And here's the funny part. These guys, this is going to collapse. This attempted coup is going to collapse on the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Case in point, we have right now the standard deviations that are coming out. And Wisconsin turnout, just in the state of Wisconsin, I'm not even going to touch PA, which is just bonkers at this point, or Georgia, or North Carolina, or even Michigan, or even Arizona, right? All these contested states. This is hilarious. The standard deviation right now in the state of Wisconsin stands at 5.5. That is astronomical. Astronomical. 3 is an insane standard deviation. That means 3 times the voter turnout. Now, when we plug this into the system, Harley, it turns out that 5,000 votes were 5 million votes were submitted in a state of 3 million people of registered voters. It's a statistical, mathematical impossibility. This is going to blow up so bad on these idiots' faces, just like peaceful protesting was blown up in their faces. Sometimes the American public is about, Harley, I firmly believe this. The American public is about to see the corruption, the stupidity, And some are looking at this. Oh my God, Trump's going to lose it. No, guarantee you 1,000%. Put it in the bank. On January 20th, 2021, Donald J. Trump will be sworn into office. We are witnessing. I don't see this as election theft, Harley. I see this as the last dying gasps of the Democratic Party.
I'll go a step further. I don't see it as the Democratic Party that's going through a dying gasp. I see it as the entire
Yes.
40-year experiment of this permanent bureaucracy.
Boom. There you go.
Put in place to carry out a reorganization of the world order.
Right.
Now, the other thing that we're looking at is that while this is all going on, there's an effort going on by the International Monetary Fund, the Bank for International Settlements, the World Economic Forum, the Davos billionaires, to move to a global digital currency. And this is contingent upon Biden coming in. But their intention is to move to keep the quantitative easing going so that they don't have a blowout before January, but to have in place a move toward a central bank controlled global digital currency,
yep,
which will service to enable that to have a certain inflation. They'll be able to write down the debts of the corporations and the speculators, at the same time seize every available asset in commercial banks because they're going to put an end to the commercial banking system. And this directly coincides with the Green New Deal. So we can't allow ourselves to just get focused on one narrow aspect of this. That's why I keep emphasizing you have to ask yourself, why are they doing these things that are so blatant, such as the coup, such as the Russian story?
It's so ridiculous.
Well, there are two things. One is they never thought they'd get caught because they thought Hillary would win. Now that Hillary's not in, they figured they could pull some skullduggery and some corruption and fraud and chicanery, and the people would be blind to it, and people suffering from illness, financial problems, those would dwarf their concern about who's the president. But that's not the case. What we saw the last 2 weeks of the campaign was an extraordinary courage of the president to go to location after location to restore this sense of his connection to the voters. That's something that hasn't really happened. You know, maybe if you go back in time a little bit, to some extent, Bill Clinton had an element of that in his campaigning. But if you really want to look at it, go back to John Kennedy and then Robert Kennedy in 1968, where you had candidates who people wanted to touch, they wanted to see, they wanted to be near. They didn't care if they got COVID-19. They wanted to be at these events. And that's a powerful potential to take that and push it to into action against a corrupt establishment which is falling apart. So this is not the time for people to go into their man cave and lick their wounds and say, well, let's wait 4 more years, wait till Biden screws it up. If we don't stop this, we're going to have a banker's dictatorship on top of a deindustrialized America, collapse of farming, collapse of food, and the spread of all kinds of new diseases because we won't have any healthcare capability left. And that's the intention of the people behind Biden.
Yeah, exactly correct. And this is why this whole entire thing, like I said before, you know, there's, I look at this whole thing, right? And one thing that there's an old proverb: when your enemy is in the process of tying a noose around his own neck, tightening that noose, and is in the process of kicking the stool off from underneath himself,
don't get in his way.
That's it.
Yeah.
Don't get in his way. I have my popcorn out. I've brewed out some delicious dark roast coffee, and I'm enjoying this malarkey, as Joe Biden would say, because they are. This is the most high school level, amateur, bargain basement way of election theft in the in the 21st century, because they're literally doing this, Harley, like it's 1948 all over again. They're literally doing it like it's the 1980s all over again. It is hilarious to see this. Absolutely hilarious.
Hey, gentlemen, there's one more point, and Harley, I'm not sure if your organization had seen this as well, because I think what you said, Harley, is just so important is in regards to not just saying that there's a voter fraud, but just giving the facts and showing examples. We've already had 2 courts that have rejected the votes, and this was up on Zero Hedge, and this is a very interesting, Harley, and if you haven't seen this yet, please get this to your organization. But when you benchmark and you take a look at the number of votes that Biden received in selected states where there were actually Democratic senators run, typically you see a synchrony there. You see the number of votes that are cast, people that are voting straight party ticket, but there's a huge irregularity in regards to those votes. So that right there is another perfect example that, hey, something is off there. So I wasn't sure if Harley, if you had seen that yet.
No, I had seen it, CJ, but it's important you're pointing it out because the line is that this was an error made by the Democratic Party because they just assumed that people would vote for the Democratic senators when they voted for Biden. So they're looking for a few scapegoats. Maybe a couple of heads will roll. In other words, they'll get different positions than they expected. Maybe they'll be the ambassador to Malawi instead of the ambassador to France. But this is typical of the kinds of anomalies that emerge that tell you something is up.
Harley, I'll do one better. I'll do one better.
Go ahead.
We have states where a Congress seat, a congressional seat, and a Senate seat was overwhelmingly flipped for Republicans, but yet the presidency goes to Biden.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. What Kirk Wiebe pointed out is that the starting point for this investigation is you put together a list of anomalies.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many. Where do I begin?
Then what you have to do is provide an adequate explanation as to what could cause it, and then take it to the other side and say, okay, how do you answer this? How do you explain it? And that's what we're seeing already in what CJ was bringing up. The Democratic Party is saying, oh, the state party screwed up in this one, or the local campaign didn't tie itself closely enough to Biden. They're coming up with all kinds of nonsense. The fact is that the American people, by and large, while we may be pretty much divided, the Trump support turned out. Biden was not capable of rallying anyone except the people who absolutely hate Donald Trump. And maybe that's 80% of the Democratic Party or 70%. But you look at the other thing that's a bit of an anomaly. The votes that are going in these cities in a large number to Biden, like Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, are occurring in areas where there's a larger than previous African American vote for Trump. That's another anomaly, isn't it?
Yep.
So where are the votes coming from?
Yeah.
These are the patterns we're talking about.
We have dead people voting, Harley. We have tossed ballots. We have issues with certifications. We have more votes counted than there are registered voters. You have supposed pipes that burst miles away that have nothing to do with the voting facility, but yet the facility had to be shut down for hours as they had to stop counting. Right? You have amazing broken machines out of nowhere. You have malfunctioning tabulations. You have magic ballots appearing 100% for one guy. Not even Saddam Hussein would do something like that, Harley. Not even, Saddam was nice. He'd always say he won by 90%. Joe Biden had more of an electoral, had more votes, percentage votes, than Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un will usually win 90, 95%, but Biden's winning by 100%.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You can get a 2-bit lawyer from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Not saying that there's bad lawyers, that they're bad lawyers, but I'm just saying you can get somebody who's never been to law school. Give him a lawyer tag, and he can take this case down. This is a walk in the park. They have 4 killers in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia right now. 4 killers. Rudy Giuliani, who is a savage, who's an absolute savage when it comes to racketeering, organized crime, finding fraud. The way he cleaned up New York, from the state, from Albany all the way down to the city, is remarkable. It will be forever written in the history books, and it's something to really look at. And the guy, when it comes to legal stuff, he knows his stuff. You got Rudy Giuliani, you got Pam Bondi, Corey Lewandowski, and you have Sidney Powell, General Flynn's lawyer. 4 of them are in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia right now. They're not going to get away with this. This is going to be hilarious. I'm literally laughing at this point, Harley.
Well, my only point is, don't forget who the enemy is.
Oh, never.
One of the things that I was talking with some of my associates, and this you're dealing with a enemy which has assassination incorporated as one of their tools.
Yep.
You know, V, one of the things that this brought me back to, because we in the LaRouche movement are quite familiar with these kinds of vote fraud operations. In 1976, the Ford-Carter election, we went into Ohio where the vote was pretty close. And we wanted to show that the Trilateral Commission had done a vote fraud to get Carter in office. Not that we thought Ford was so great, but we knew that Carter was there to bring in Brzezinski, to bring in the financial networks that were going to see William Miller and others who were going to destroy the financial system. And so what we did is we went into Cleveland and we went through the voter rolls. And we came up with thousands of names that were people who supposedly lived in empty, vacant lots. People with names like Carter Roosevelt Sr., Carter Roosevelt Jr., Carter Roosevelt III, all of whom voted at least once. And we presented a dossier to the attorney for the Ford campaign. And he looked at it, and his first comment was, well, this is pretty compelling, but you can't necessarily prove that these people voted for Carter. And in order to get a judge to make a ruling, you have to show that these people voted for Carter. Well, then we went in and just showed that these were in precincts that were 133 to nothing, the vote, where these people supposedly lived. So they took it to Jerry Ford. And Ford initially indicated that he was going to fight. And supposedly he went home and Betty Ford said, with all the bad feelings in the country about Watergate, don't do this. And so the chance to keep Jimmy Carter out of office in 1976 was undermined by that kind of phony gentleness of Betty Ford. Now, we had this happen in 1986 when we won statewide elections in Illinois. We had people nominated as Democrats, LaRouche members nominated as Democrats for lieutenant governor and secretary of state. And in order to keep us out of office, Adlai Stevenson Jr., who was the Democratic nominee for governor, created a phony third party. And they committed massive fraud to keep our people out from being statewide officials in Illinois. And from that time forward, even though we continued to get 25, 30, 40% of the vote in Democratic primaries, they made sure that we were always below the level where we could get someone elected. So we have an experience with this. We know what goes into it. Now, Sidney Powell is the kind of person who can fight this out. A lot of the election lawyers the Republicans have are weak, but I think having Sidney Powell in there gives me a certain amount of confidence.
Harley, since we're mentioning history, and V knows I come up with all these crazy ideas and stuff like that, but since we're talking about history and everything, and we know what's happening to Trump has to have some type of intelligence operations behind it. You know, we can't deny that what's happening to him. Would it hurt at this point, Harley, to strike back and say that, you know, I'm declassifying the JFK documents?
Well, look, what I think is crucial is that all the documents have to be declassified and made publicly available. Because what you need to show, for example, the Flynn dossier, what you need to show is that what they feared about Trump and Michael Flynn was that he would have uprooted these criminals who run the Justice Department, run the intelligence community, and that would have been game over. And that's why Flynn was targeted. That's why Peter Strzok and the FBI changed their decision on January 5th, 2017. Instead of dropping the Flynn investigation, they went gangbusters with it. So you're absolutely right, CJ, that You might as well go back to 1948 and take a look at the landslide Lyndon case, where Lyndon Johnson was 300 something votes behind at the end of vote count, and they discovered a box with 360 votes in it, all for Lyndon. So this is there's a long history of this Chicago machine, which probably got JFK elected, the Daley machine. There's a long history in this, and people know it. So instead of cynically just saying, well, this is how they do it, we'll try again next time. No, let's fight this one out. There's too much at stake.
I will also say this. CJ brought up the idea of the intelligence side of things. I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to give too much detail here, but I've seen this with my own eyes. I can confirm to you this, and I'm not going to go into detail. There's been rumors the last couple of days about watermarks, but some sort of a QFD type watermark that is trackable and traceable to some sort of a radioisotope. This has been making the rounds. I became aware of it approximately 10 days ago. I didn't say much about it, anything like that whatsoever. I can confirm to you, I have been presented this. I have seen it. All I will say, it is real. Take it for what it's worth. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm not implying anything more or less than that. It is real. And I will tell you that I've also had that confirmed from 2 different places. And what that entails, and there's a some sort of an isotope that allows trackability of the real ballots, then I would have to say that we are watching something that's more than just an election. We are seeing something that you can interpret it, and it can be seen in the light of an elaborate, well-planned, well-strategized takedown. And I will say this. We've known about voter fraud for quite some time. Trump's spoken about it countless of times. And I'm glad this is happening now, Harley. I'm glad this is happening now because I think the American public is having the curtain pulled back, and they're seeing the stupidity of this whole entire thing, number one. Number two, they're seeing the corruption of this whole entire thing. And number three, we're not going to let this happen. And this is enraging. There's a lot of Democrats, real true liberals, not these crazy leftist commies who are a bunch of patsies and useful idiots, but real liberals who can defer with us when it comes to football issues, taxes, things of that sort, gay marriage, blah, 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 right? But at the end of the day, they still love this country, and they believe in the sanctity and and basically the sanctity of the electoral process, and that should never be tampered with, that it's sacred. And they themselves feel that what Biden is doing is wrong, and many of them are starting to come out and say this is wrong. This is why are they not allowing transparency? Folks, I think I'm starting to see this, that maybe I'm deluded here, Harley. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I've completely finally lost it, and I've finally snapped. But I am not worried. I'm literally not worried about this. And I think we're seeing an elaborate takedown. And this is going to be one for the history books, folks. That's what I'm saying, Harley.
Well, I differ with you slightly, V, because I don't think, as much as I like the image of you in an easy chair with popcorn and good coffee, I don't think we can afford that right now, because I think this is going to be a brawl in the trenches.
Yes,
One
1,000%.
of the things that I saw just before I came on was my associates in Houston sent me these placards that are appearing in all sorts of areas around Houston, that on Saturday there are going to be Trump caravans going in the north, south, east, and west of Houston. So you can hook up with a caravan anywhere there. I think this is an excellent idea. The same way you had the boat caravans, the trucker caravans, and so on. Get out and show that you're not going to be intimidated. Now, I think we're in a moment where that kind of expression of commitment to justice does tend to rub off on some of the real progressives. I wouldn't use the term liberal, but real progressives who are still skeptical of the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA. They don't like wars, but they're stuck in the Democratic Party. They have an opportunity now to come out and do something good for the country. And so I think we could see more of a shift that way. I'll say one thing on the watermarks. I'm a little skeptical of it because it's being pushed by some of the people who seem to think that everything is a plan of Trump's. I'm just not sure. I would go with what we've been talking about before. If those exist and it's true, well then that's the checkmate. But I think in the meantime, we've got more than enough to prove the case, and we ought to stick with what we actually know. Now, if you've seen it and you know that, I defer to you, but I haven't seen it from people I think are completely trustworthy and reliable.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens. It is exciting, nonetheless, Harley. And either which way,
Very
yeah, either
so.
which way it goes. I mean, Trump's base has been super energized, and just on the audits itself, when this election goes to audit, uh, we will emerge. Trump will emerge victorious. There's no doubt about
V,
it. There's no way.
here's something really fascinating. In the last week, the London Economist, the journal started by the Rothschilds, its a spokesman for the city of London, came out saying Biden must win. So did the Financial Times.
Mhm.
And then yesterday, the Economist came out and said, well, it looks like Biden will win, but here's the problem. Trumpism is here to stay. And so even if they, in their moment of victory, they're terrified of the patriotic impulse of the American citizens.
Yep, exactly. And that's the proof. All we need. That is the proof. With that being said, Harley, we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming on and spending and sharing this time with us, man. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, V. We always have interesting talks.
Yes, we do, sir.
And
Yes, we do.
people can see my daily updates. CJ has it up on the screen now. We're starting to get a lot more numbers on my daily updates. They haven't been censored or shut down yet. So you can go to the LaRouche Pack video platform on YouTube, at least for now, and see the daily update I have.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we're at the end of the program, folks. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you are alerted when Harley comes back on. And with that being said, CJ, take it away.